All right, y'all, what's going on? Welcome to the Monday Night Live. Still waiting for some folks to tune in. Before I get started, I'll let folks gather around. I got my nettle tea tonight. And I got whole tea leaves. So when I drink my tea from whole tea leaves, this is what I got. I got my big old mug. And then I got this convenient device here. That's what I use to steep my tea leaves. So that's how I'm living my life. Is how I'm doing my tea, my nettle tea tonight. Yeah, this thing is cool too. I just got this little thing. It was like $6 or something like that. It's got a little hook on the end. It's nice. I like that. Kind of inspires me to get more tea leaves. I had a tribe member send me a whole large batch of different tea leaves. So Miss Gigi, big shout out to you for coming through with the tea leaves. Much appreciated. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? How is everybody doing tonight? Put a 1 in the chat if it's been a good week so far. Getting off to the right start. And tonight, it's going to be all about training. G. Ellis, what's going on? Relax on life. What's going on? Good to see you in here. No rare, what's going on? I hope I said that right. There we go. We got the ones popping up. There we go. That's what I like to see. Definitely, you know, I'm going to be delivering tonight as usual. So definitely hit that like button. Let's boost this thing up a bit. I'm going to be going over resistance bands, how to train with resistance bands to maximize your results. I'm going to be going over some of my favorite exercises that I personally put in my training plans for resistance bands. Why you would want to use resistance bands in your training, right? Do you even need to go to the gym? In short, you don't really need to go to the gym. I actually started going to the gym last October because I was missing the barbell. So I predominantly train now with resistance bands, a barbell, and body weight. Those are my 3 training modalities. And I'm crushing it right now. You know what I'm saying? Getting back in my strength bag, putting up some numbers. So I'm getting back to my old self, putting on some mass, some lean gains or so, being patient with the process. But you know, I usually talk about nutrition, but my original background where I first started wasn't in nutrition. Actually, it wasn't in high raw vegan nutrition. It was actually in strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and corrective exercise. Having more so of a fitness background, straight up, right? So going back to my roots a bit and talking more about that, showing some video tutorials, talking about the do's and don'ts of training with resistance bands, because if you're training with resistance bands and you're doing it and you're using the bands in the conventional way that you use, let's say barbell or dumbbell or even body weight, you're not really going to get a whole lot out of resistance bands. Because resistance bands, this is the term for it is variable resistance training. It's a dynamic load, right? So the resistance that the resistance band gives you increases the more you stretch it. So the more you go through a movement, the more you challenge the band to stretch, the more it's going to challenge you, right? So unlike conventional weights are dead weights. They don't really pull back against you, right? Whereas resistance bands will actively pull back against you the more you pull against them. So it's a very interesting relationship. And if you're going to train with resistance bands, you got to be clear on what your goal is behind training with resistance bands. So, depending on what your goal is, resistance bands can either be an accessory exercise or your primary form of exercise, right? So it can take like a secondary approach. So for example, let's say you're a power lifter. You want to primarily focus on your big lifts, your bench press, your overhead press, your squat, your deadlift, your barbell row, that kind of thing. This is where resistance bands become a secondary exercise in order to assist you in adding more weight to the bar to get stronger. If your goal is muscle growth, then to be quite honest, resistance bands can be your primary and even your only training modality, right? Aside from body weight, right? Now, when you're using resistance bands, the biggest mistake that people make when using resistance bands is they'll do 3 sets of 12 reps or 4 sets of 10 reps or something like that, like what people typically do in a gym training. Now, if you're doing this using resistance bands, you're leaving a lot of results on the table. Now, before I'm gonna take a step back, I'm gonna talk about what the primary driver of muscle growth is. And the reason why this is important to understand is because there's a lot of scientific literature and there's a lot of conflicting opinions. Some people say, well, lifting heavier weights, right? Lifting heavier weights is going to be the thing that gives you the most muscle growth. And then other people say, doing the highest amount of training volume, right? Volume is the king of muscle hypertrophy, the king of muscle mass growth, right? And then some people say full body training frequency. So the more frequently you train a muscle group, the more it will grow, right? Now the interesting thing is all 3 answers are not wrong, right? You can maximize for lifting as much weight as possible. That will get you very beneficial gains as far as muscle growth. It's also very risky, and it makes recovery a lot longer. Then there's training volume. Training volume can also be extremely beneficial, right? Now, the general standard is 10 to 16 sets per week on, any given muscle group. So let's say if you want to grow your shoulders, right? It's like 10 to 16 sets a week or something like that, right? Or your legs, let's say you want to squat or something like that. Squats, leg press, leg extensions, a total of 10 to 16 sets per week, right? And then there's a general recommendation of train in between a 6 and 10 rep range, or 10 to 16 rep range, or 6 to 30 reps, right? So, these things. So there's all of these different recommendations, and they're all right to a degree. And then there's frequency. The more you train a muscle, the more you stimulate muscle protein synthesis of that muscle, which can also expedite the process of muscle growth. That also works. My personal approach, what I do is I maximize for muscle growth based on what the core driver of muscle growth is in and of itself, independent of training. Why does muscle grow? Now, muscle does 2 things. It produces force or resists force, right? So when you're training a muscle, you want to do 2 things: produce force, resist force. Now, muscle can resist way more force than it can produce. This is because muscle largely exists on your body to resist force. Like, for example, gravity, which is always acting on you at all times, right? Also, muscle is a defense mechanism. So, for example, if there is something that is threatening you in your environment, you need to be able to resist that threat, or you need to be able to move your body to get out of the way of that threat. But a core function of muscle is self-preservation, protection, right? The thing that your muscle does the most is actually protect your bones and connective tissues and keeps everything in alignment in your body, right? So your lats pull your shoulders down into place, your trapezius pull your shoulders up into place, your pecs pull your shoulders forward into place, your trapezius pull your shoulders back into place, right? All of your muscles are pulling against each other, right? So you got your muscles on the front of your body and the muscles on the back of your body. You got muscles from above, muscles from below, and they're all pulling against each other to keep your skeleton in alignment and stabilize your body, right? So that you're not flopping around like a jellyfish. So the primary function of your muscle is to maintain your body's integrity. And your body mostly either maintains a certain posture by resisting force or producing forces, both at the same time. But primarily, your body is mainly producing force in an isometric way, holding a certain position, right? Now, if you fatigue a given muscle group, like let's say I fatigue my chest, I hit my chest real hard, I fatigue my chest. What's going to happen is weakens my chest. And then my shoulders can actually start winning the battle, pulling my shoulder girdle back. My body wants to maintain my shoulder girdle, right? My scapula placement. So my body will respond to me fatiguing my chest by reinforcing it and making it stronger so that it can better hold the position of my shoulder girdle. Right? So your body is reacting to whatever you're doing. But basically what I'm trying to say is your muscle grows because it needs to grow or be strengthened in order to continue to protect the integrity of your body. Protect your bones, protect your ligaments, protect your tendons. Right? If muscle atrophies, your body's integrity is shot. This even affects your entire metabolism and all the hormones in your body. Losing muscle mass is a direct threat to your life. Like having muscle mass is a very big deal. Not just strength-wise or protection-wise, but even like on a cellular level, metabolically. Right? I mean, having more muscle mass can lower your blood pressure. Having more muscle mass can improve your insulin sensitivity. Having more muscle mass can improve your gut microbiome. Having more muscle mass can significantly reduce your chances of developing cancer. All types of stuff. Right? Muscle mass is a very big deal. Muscle mass literally is directly correlated to bone density. Right? So as you get older, if you're losing bone density, it's because you're losing muscle mass. And so a big part of our lives as human beings is working to build as much muscle mass as we can and hold on to that muscle mass as much as possible. It's really what we should be doing as human beings. It's like a core tenet of being a healthy human being, is having an abundance of musculature. Right? This makes a difference of longevity. If you wanted to put years on your life, if you wanted to improve the quality of your life in your later years of your life, one thing that you could start doing today is working to increase your grip strength. Right? Literally increasing your grip strength not just strengthens your hands, but also your shoulders and reduces pressure and tension in your neck and your C-spine. And that in turn can improve your mental health. That's how deep this goes, right? Strengthening your lat muscles, right? Which is the muscles right underneath your armpit that goes right all the way down into your hip. Strengthening those lat muscles will pull your shoulders down and back, and that can help to reverse anxiety, right? That can help to reverse asthma, sleep apnea, right? Pulling your neck and your spine into place. So your nervous system, right, your gut-brain axis communicates more effectively when you fix your posture through strengthening the necessary muscle groups. Right? You can reduce plantar fasciitis by strengthening your hips, right? Your glutes, which is the largest muscle in your body. Improving the hip stability and the musculature in your hips would directly benefit the quality of your knees, ankles, and the bottom of your feet. It's deep. So yeah, basically, if you want to maximize muscle growth, you need to train in a way where you fatigue the muscle enough where your brain registers that muscle fatigue as a threat. And your body responds to that threat by reinforcing that fatigued muscle group, making it stronger, thicker, more durable. Right? So maximizing muscular fatigue is the name of the game if we're trying to grow muscle. Right? Mechanical tension is the thing that we want, right? Mechanical tension. And one thing that resistance bands do very well is maximize mechanical tension and muscle fatigue in the safest way possible. So this means that even if you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, you can use resistance bands and go hard in your training as much as your body will allow you, with little to no risk to your health. Now, if you're lifting a barbell or dumbbells or conventional weights, the risk is going to be a lot higher. The reason why that's the case is because when you're working with like barbells, dumbbells, or any kind of conventional weights, well, all of the tension is placed on the joint in its weakest position, or is placed on the muscle in its weakest position. So for example, let's say if you're doing a squat, all of the tension is going to be on your muscle groups when the muscle is as stretched as possible. So in the bottom of the squat, that's where all the tension becomes maximized. So in the bottom of the squat and right above parallel, or right at parallel, that's where you're going to have the maximum muscle fatigue, right? So, you know, when people talk about, well, I don't squat and things like that because my knees, resistance bands can really help, because the thing is that the tension is not maximized in the bottom of the movement or when the muscle is as lengthened as possible. It's actually the opposite. The muscle, the resistance is placed on the muscle when it's in its strongest position. So resistance bands incentivize you to produce the hardest muscular contraction as possible. So you train your nervous system to contract that muscle hard, where you decrease the angle in the joint as much as possible. One of the biggest reasons why people struggle in their training is because they don't feel the muscles they're working. So like, let's say you're doing a deadlift. So a deadlift is an exercise where you're hinging at the hip. And being that your hip is the dominant mover, you should experience most of the muscle stress in the glutes. But for most people, they feel it in their back instead of their butt. So then the deadlift becomes very risky. You can hurt your back and not really grow your glutes, right? It's not what we want. With resistance bands, you don't really put much tension on your back. It's all in your glutes. And all of the resistance gets placed on the hamstrings and the glutes as much as possible, right? Because with the resistance bands, you don't have the weight in front of you in the way that a bar is, right? It's more so it's right underneath your hip. So you can position the leverage to be as safe as possible. And then the force is maximized at the top of the deadlift rather than in the bottom. So the bottom of the deadlift with the resistance bands is actually the easiest portion of the movement. Now with a conventional weight, as far as the deadlift is concerned, all of the stress is in the bottom of the movement, and it gets placed on your back, right, where you're directly hinged over. That's the difference. So if you're doing lunges, deadlifts, squats, or anything like that with the resistance bands, you're primarily going to feel it in above the knee and at the top of the movement. You're going to really be able to squeeze your glutes hard and extend your hips, driving your hips forward. And you can develop this mind-muscle connection. And you don't got to worry about dropping a weight, getting pinned under a weight, or anything like that. So you can take a set and you can push it as hard as humanly possible to really maximize muscle fatigue. So now let's say you're doing any resistance band exercise and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do like 3 sets of 10. Don't worry about hitting a certain rep, like a certain rep target, like 3 sets, 10 reps, or anything like that. It would make more sense to set a rep range. So let's say you take a specific resistance band, right? Doesn't really matter which one you choose, but you take that band and you can do every set with that band. But rather than trying to hit like 10 or 12 reps, you can do 8 to 12 reps. That could be your range. But if you hit 12 reps and you have 4 more left in the tank, then keep going. Don't stop at 12 if you got more left over. Because we're trying to maximize muscle fatigue, and you don't maximize muscle fatigue if you stop short. But if your rep range is 8 to 12 and you get 16, well then perhaps you can either change your hand positioning or use a thicker resistance band. You can get a lot of mileage out of one band. It depends on where you grip the band, right? So let's say you're doing deadlifts with a resistance band. You can grip the band closer to your feet or further from your feet. So if the band is underneath your feet, right? So basically if you're doing a deadlift, you stand on top of the band and then you grab one side of the band with one hand and one side on the other hand and make sure you're gripping evenly. So you can grip 3 inches from the ground, 5 inches from the ground, or 8 inches from the ground. But the closer you grip towards the ground, the more resistance you're going to get out of that band. Right? So it's all about the feel. It's not really about how many pounds of force or whatever the band can produce. That's part of it. But a lot of it is the feel of the movement. And what you want to do is you want to maximize that feeling on that particular muscle that you're trying to work. It's really what you're doing. You want to target that muscle and you want to stay on it and really push the set. So it's not like you're training for a powerlifting competition where you add 5% or you add 10% or anything. It's not really like that. You can get a lot of mileage out of one band. So like if you buy a set of resistance bands, it'll typically be 4 or 5 bands. So like one band will be like, you know, let's say 50 to 120 pounds of resistance it can produce. And another one will be like, you know, 50 to 80. And then another one will be like 15 to 30 or, you know, that kind of thing. But you can get a lot of mileage out of one band. Now, for me, I maximize for time efficiency. And the reason why is because one of the biggest mistakes that people make, not just from, you know, 3 sets, 10 reps or whatever, and not pushing the muscle hard enough, but also the workout's taking too long. Right? You have a finite amount of time to really get the most out of your training. And from your first hard set to your last hard set, you've got like 20 to 30 minutes on the clock to get it. Any more than that, and you're kind of just not really producing your best effort. Training has diminishing returns. The longer the training session is, the less effective it becomes. And you end up doing more harm than good if you train too long. And a lot of people, they train too long. So like, let's say you want to train your back and using resistance bands, you're doing the lat pull downs and you're doing rows and you're doing single arm rows and you're doing all kind of different variations. There's only been so many ways you can train a muscle group, right? In any given muscle group, you really can only train it in 2 ways, right? Because each muscle group only does, or each muscle only does like 2 joint movements, right? So like I'm talking about even like the bicep. A lot of people think the bicep just does one movement, elbow flexion. Actually, biceps do two movements: elbow flexion and supination of the wrist, right? Your pec muscles. Now, your pec muscles, they will either bring your humerus across your body or down towards, or adduction. So either crossing the arm over the body or tucking the humerus towards the torso, right? Adduction, right? So a transverse movement or adduction, right? Your lats, right? Your lats do two things. They drop the shoulders and they retract the shoulders. Two things. That's it. When you're training a muscle group, one thing you really want to do with that muscle group is you want to lengthen it as much as possible and you want to contract it as much as possible. So let's say if I'm trying to build my lats, I'm trying to build my upper back muscles, I'm doing one rowing movement and I'm doing one vertical movement when I'm reaching overhead. Because if I reach overhead like a lat pull down or a pull up, I'm lengthening the lats a lot more than if I was to do rows. But the reason why I would do rows is because I'm focusing more on retracting my scapula, as well as activating my my spinal erectors in my lower back. Right, and I'm gonna show examples of this, but I'm just basically verbalizing. I'm gonna go through some exercises here. So now, getting into resistance bands, how to train with resistance bands. Here's one layout you can do. With that in mind, you can train a muscle group, two different joint actions, two different directions, right? So let's say we stick with training my upper back or my lats, right? I can do lat pull downs and then I can do rows. Okay. With the lat pull downs, let's say my rep range is 16 to 20 reps. Right, so I'm going to use a band that I can do 16 to 20 reps, or even 12 to 16 reps. Let's go with 12 to 16. And then after that, I switch to rows. And then with the rows, my rep range could be, let's say, 8 to 12 or 6 to 10. It's going to be a lower rep range, but I'm going to use a thicker band that's really going to fight me. Let's say I do that. I do one set of lat pull downs. And I just rep out. I push the set as hard as I can, even if my rep range is 12 to 16 and I still have more left in the tank after 16. I'm going to push it and see if I can get to 18. I'm going to see if I can get to 20. I'm going to see if I can get to 22. And hell, if I can get to 24, I'll go for 24. But I'm going to work that muscle as hard as possible, right? In that one set. And once I hit that one set, when the lat pull downs, and I know I've gotten everything I can get out of that one set, that's it. I'm done with lat pull downs. Then I'm doing the rows. And I'm going to do the same thing on the rows. I'm going to push it as far as I can. Now, when I get to the rows, the muscle's going to be a lot more fatigued from the lat pull downs. Right? So I'm not going to be able to get as many reps. But I'm going for a different muscle stimulus. Now, for the lat pull downs, if I'm doing the lat pull downs, what I want to do is I want to pull my hands as close to my shoulders as possible and drop my shoulders, pick and push my chest out and up and retract my scapula, right? And then with the rows, I'm going to pull more to my stomach or towards my hips, right? Because what I want to do is when I'm lat pulls, my shoulders are still kind of elevated. But with rows, I can drop my scapula a lot more and I can get more of a low pull. So rather than pulling my hands to my shoulders, I'm pulling my hands to my hips, right? So I'm getting two different muscle groups because the lats connect to, let's say, for example, your lats work in relation to your trapezius and your rear delts, really across your upper back. With the rows, you can get more of your spinal erectors in. You can really focus on depressing the shoulders, where each rep, what I'm trying to do is as I'm pulling my elbow back and I'm pulling my hand to my hip, I'm focusing on pushing my shoulders down towards my hips as much as possible. So I'm focusing on the depression of the shoulder rather than the retraction of the scapula. like in the lat pull down. 2 exercises for your back, and boom, you're good. For most people, you would get a phenomenal amount of growth doing that once or twice a week. 2 exercises. So like, let's say you had a training day and you were focused on pulling on your training day. Your pulling exercises, essentially, it could be leg curls, deadlifts, and then the rows and the lat pull downs. And that would work all of the pulling muscles in your body. So the lat pull downs and the rows for your upper, mid, and lower back, your deadlifts for your glutes and your hamstrings, and then leg curls for your hamstrings. And that could be your pulling day. That can be your back day. Boom, you're done. Another day could be shoulders and chest. Right? So for your shoulders, one thing that's good to think about with your shoulders is your elbow position. Whenever you're doing any type of exercise, any type of upper body exercise, you want to think about what your elbow is doing, what direction or what pathway your elbow is going in. Right? So let's say I know that one of the best exercises I can do for my shoulders is overhead pressing. Right? And the reason why is because when I start with an overhead press, I'm down here, I'm in the bottom. And here I have my lats, my front delts and my side delts really lengthened out. And as I press overhead, my body, my elbow has to go from being below my shoulder to over my shoulder. It's a much longer pathway. I'm also utilizing my trapezes, my triceps, different things like that. I'm using other muscle groups, but overhead pressing, I'm able to resist and produce much more force. Right. As a matter of fact, if you really want to get a strong upper body, one of the best things you can do is focus on overhead pressing. It's not like bench pressing or push-ups. It's actually overhead pressing. Right. And you know you have a strong upper body if you can do, let's say, handstands or handstand push-ups, or you can overhead press 100% of your body weight. Right. These are like good goals that are benchmarks of real upper body strength. Pull-ups and overhead presses, these vertical movements, right? How much weight or resistance can you put over your head? So that's one exercise for shoulders. Now shoulders, actually, the interesting thing is your shoulders are like, it's either the first, I would say your shoulders are the second largest muscle group in your upper body. Right. When I say largest, your lats, your back muscles are your first largest. Shoulders are second. Some people would probably dispute that, but I'm talking about strength outcomes. You can pull a lot more than you can push. Your pec muscles are actually not that large. A lot of people focus on building their chest, and the fact of the matter is that your chest muscles are not really that large of a muscle group. It would make way more sense to actually focus on building your shoulders. And the thing is that it's much healthier and much smarter to have strong shoulders. If you have strong shoulders, that carries over to having a strong chest. It also carries over to having less risk of injury in your shoulders and more shoulder mobility. So as far as for your overall health, it makes way more sense to do that. So with resistance bands, exercise number 1, the first and primary exercise would be overhead presses. Number 2 would be like either a pull apart or a face pull exercise. Now the interesting thing, I'm more partial to face pulls. Face pulls is essentially where you start with your hands out in front of you here, and you basically pull back this way, and your hands should come right by your ears. And you can really pull back. So you think about taking your thumbs and pointing your thumbs back behind your head here. And you want to really pull back and stick your chest out and flex all of those muscle groups. So you hit your rear delts, and you hit your side delts and your trapezes and everything up here. And you get external rotation, which is really good for your rotator cuffs and your overall shoulder health. For me, when I train shoulders, it's face pulls first, overhead press second. Those are my 2 shoulder exercises, right? And I'm going to show what these exercises look like in a second. As far as chest is concerned, chest is essentially top 2 chest exercises are going to be like some form of push-up or pressing exercise and a chest fly exercise. One thing I've really learned though is if I had to say what exercises build your chest the most, if I had to pick 2 exercises that built your that I would do the most to rely on building my chest, it would actually be either push-ups or dips. So body weight dips, right? So I'm actually going to order like parallel bars to train dips with resistance bands. You can put resistance bands over your traps and do resistance bands dips. It's like weighted dips. It's amazing. I got to record a video tutorial for that exercise because I haven't done that yet. For quadriceps, and matter of fact, let's get into it. Let's get into some resistance band exercises. I'm going to give y'all some demonstrations here. So there's that lat pull down I was talking about. Okay. So this, you don't even need a gym. So if I'm on the road or I'm traveling, I can get a strap right to a tree and boom. So you now see here, it's all about that scapular retraction and reaching overhead, right? Let me play that one more time. Boom. So quality reps. I'm not rushing through the reps. Take your time. Really focus on working the muscle, right? And so now you see my hand position in this exercise. Let me start that over. You see my hand position, right? I can actually grip the band closer to the tree, to the tree it's connected to, and that would give me more resistance on that band, right? So this is like a 2-second hold and squeeze, right? So right at that bottom, I'm dropping the shoulders and squeezing, right? Getting a full scapular retraction, right? So it's all about movement quality, right? That's what resistance band. So this is training, right? Every rep is a quality rep. All right. Now what I'm going to do here is let me get into the rows that I was talking about. And let's say we want to do rows, or we want to do more of an advanced exercise here. Boom. So this here is a relay row. So one arm is holding the contraction, really squeezing the muscle, right? Getting that peak muscular contraction. And then the other one is producing movement. And just trading back and forth. Let me tell you something. If you want to get that burn, if you really want to work a muscle, this is one of the best ways to do it. And the thing that I like about the relay exercise is because it'll help you fix your form. So let's say you pull with the rows and the shoulders kind of hiked up. You can be conscious of that and drop the shoulder. So this makes you very aware of the position of your elbows and the position of your shoulders and all of that kind of stuff. So you get more of a feel for the movement. Training with resistance bands is all about how the movement feels. Right? So this is actually one of my favorites right here. You will feel this for sure. Now, then more of a conventional is this here. This is where I would start people. Now, the interesting thing about the banded rows here, and the reason why I love putting this in training plans, is because a lot of people don't really know how to row correctly. A lot of people have a hunched back. So if I put a set of conventional dumbbells or a barbell in your hand and I tell you to do rows, you'll feel a lot of it in your lower back. A lot of people feel it in their lower back. It's very uncomfortable. The shoulders are shrugged up, hiked up high. The chest is tight. Right, so there's all of this kyphosis going on in here with the shoulders coming in towards the clavicle. And then this is a terrible position to row from. So with this here, you can focus on pushing the chest out and dropping the shoulders, fixing your posture, and then pulling those elbows back, right? So this is a great way to teach you how to have proper body mechanics. If you're new to building muscle or training, using resistance bands is actually the best thing that you can do. That's the best thing you can start with. This is training modality number one. We want to reduce risk as much as possible while teaching and learning correct movement patterns. Is where it's at. Right? And now, if you really want to get fancy and you want to be a bodybuilder, right? What you could do too is you can tie in more of your rear delts, which is a part of your shoulder. It's your shoulder has three heads. It has a front delt, a medial delt, and a rear delt. Whenever you train your back, you always hit your rear delts, but your rear delts are a smaller muscle groups. They get dominated by the larger muscle groups. So what you could do is something I call a banded cross row. And the banded cross row essentially brings your hands closer together. And now in order to hit your rear delts, you have to focus on, rather than pulling the elbows back, you have to pull the elbows out to the side and away from your midline. Right? So now this is more scapula focus, and this hits more of the rear delts. It forces you to internally rotate at the wrist and flare out the elbow. And you pull the shoulder, or you pull the elbow further away from your midline. And that puts more of an emphasis on the rear delts. Right, so the big thing among folks who want to do want to go for more of like a bodybuilding aesthetic, and so you want to get some nice round 3D delts, right? This is a phenomenal way to do that. It's a phenomenal exercise for that. All right. Now, if you're a person where your shoulders are kind of tight and you're very kyphotic in here, and it's hard to get like that good contraction, and the shoulders are hiked up, I'm gonna show you two exercises here that is really beneficial for fixing that. All right, let me pull it up here. Hold on a second. Let me get it. I'm going to start with the high pull apart. The high pull apart. The high pull apart, boom. This is a really good exercise too for shoulder mobility, and if you really want to get good contractions for lat pull downs or pull-ups. Now the reason why I like this in particular is because this is easier on the shoulders, and your rear delts, it's interesting because your rear delts, the fibers run down your shoulder, not across your shoulder. So what a lot of people do is they focus on pulling apart this way and this plane here, straight across the body in this horizontal plane. But if you do it vertically, you actually get a lot more of a pinch in your scapula, right? So if your shoulders are really hiked up, if you focus on a high pull apart, it forces you to push your chest out and pull down this way, right? So rather than pulling this way, because you can do pull aparts this way and have the shoulders really hiked up. So what you want to do is raise the arms a bit more and pull down. So we're going to get those shoulders down and chest up, right? So you get it right across those upper pecs to really open up the, right? So that's exercise number one for that shoulder mobility as far as resistance bands are concerned. And then the second one we got is we got the seated face pull. This is if you don't have anything to anchor your band to. So it's this right here, that face pull. You can do this sitting in the park, right? So imagine pointing your thumbs back behind you here, right? Externally rotating at the shoulder. If you are a person when you walk, when you walk with your arms down to your side, if your palms of your hands are turned back behind you, right? So like if you walk and you notice your palms are turned inward where your palms are facing behind you, your shoulders are just really internally rotated, right? So you need to reverse the internal rotation and work on more external rotation. Because what happens is when let's say we're sitting, we're working a desk job, and when you're sitting at a desk job, what happens is the shoulder, the neck comes forward, the chin comes out, and then this gets compressed, and the shoulders come forward, and then all of this gets tied up in here, and we turtle up. We get this nice shrimp posture, tight hip flexors and everything. We just all come to the midline here. Wow, locked up, right? So that's why it's really good to reverse. Point the thumbs behind you, open up. Boom. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 90 years old. You can work on this right here. All right. Now, if you have something where you can anchor the band, then I would say instead of having the band anchored up by your feet, you can raise the origin point. Like let's say you have a door or a shelf or some kind of post or something. What you can do is you can pull rather than from down by your feet and up and back, you can actually pull from straight out in front of you. So you can fix the band to a point that's right at like eye level, right at like your eyebrow, and then pull back behind there. And that's probably like a better position to pull from. All right. Now, I talked about overhead presses. With overhead presses, and this is even challenging for me when I recorded this here. Now, if you have one shoulder that's a lot more dominant than the other shoulder, well, first of all, I'm going to show you, before I even get into that, let me show you where you can start with your overhead presses. If we want to get more of an emphasis on your posture, boom. The C to Z press, right? This is a great way to start. Number one, you lengthen your hamstrings here. Number two, you have to lean forward and sit upright, so you have to engage your abs. And you got to press overhead, right? So this is a great way to train your posture. Now, the cool thing about training with resistance bands and hitting your shoulders is the fact that you can't cheat. You can't be bending your knees and heaving and hoeing. You can't use no momentum or nothing, right? Real strict, right? So this is all shoulders right here. And let me with resistance bands is some of the best modalities you can use to train your shoulders, right? So now what we want to do is, let's say we want to work on our overhead press. That's one way to work on our overhead press. And another way to work on our overhead press is, hold on, let me get this up here. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Boom. Real simple. Now, what I like to do, and you said I'm like locked in here and I'm pressing here, is because I like to emulate more natural points. I like training resistance bands with like kettlebells. I like single arm movement, so I'll mimic that. And I'll squeeze in tight here. And so usually if I'm doing like a single arm exercise, I'll squeeze this hand tight on the opposite side and lock it in nice and tight to prevent energy leakage. If I have this arm all loose and whatnot and all this force up in here, it limits my pressing power here. So if I get tight on this side and really breathe and brace on my core straight through, and I get solid and really flex and extend my hips, I can get a nice press. So that's just good body mechanics. One thing that's really important to know, that's very interesting that people don't really think about, is if you want to maximize, let's say you're using your right or your left, if you want to maximize power output from one side, tense up your other side, right? Produce static tension on one side and dynamic tension and resistance and movement with the other side. If this side is loose, if there's any looseness in your body, that takes away from the force production and resistance on the active side, right? So there's a thing that's referred to as energy leakage, right? So like, for example, let's say you're doing pull-ups. and let's say your legs are dangling underneath you and your core is all relaxed, it'd be really hard to do pull-ups. But if you fully extend your legs, and then you fully extend your hips, you flex your glutes, and you contract your abs, and you make your body stiff as a board, and then you do pull-ups, you'll get a much better rep and a much better muscular contraction, right? Because you prevent energy leakage. So that's a good trait. So far what we talked about is the rule of any muscle group, two primary movements, right? Any muscle group in the body has two functions, right? So that implies 2 exercises per muscle group. So let's say if you train 3 muscle groups within a training day, that's 6 exercises, right? You push each set to the maximum effort. Most people only really need 1 set. Okay, 1 set. If you're a bodybuilder and you want something more advanced, you can do something more advanced, which is what I'm going to get into now, right? And I'm going to get back into some more tutorials on exercises, right? So let's say you've been using resistance bands. You've been doing everything I told you. 2 exercises per muscle group, 1 set. You take that 1 set to maximum effort, as many reps as possible, quality reps. Beautiful squeeze and contract, 2 to 1 rep range, 2 to 1 rep tempo. Pull in quick, slow release, solid contractions, good form, right? What is the more advanced method? The more advanced method could be week 1, 1 set per exercise. Week 2, you add a set to each exercise. Week 3, you add another set for each exercise, right? So week 1 is 1 set per exercise. Week 2 is 2 sets. Week 3 is 3 sets. And then week 4, you give yourself a break and you go back to 1 set. So basically you ramp up and then you come down, deload, and then you can repeat that and ramp back up again. Right, so that's a nice undulating way, because the thing is, muscle growth and strength gain is not on a straight line, right? It's undulating. So you go up, you come down, you go up a little bit more, you come down, you go up a little bit more, you come down. So the trend line is upward, but the pattern is undulating, right? So it's not just a straight line. You burn yourself out trying to do that, right? But you don't really have to worry about that if you're only doing 1 set per exercise. If you're only doing 1 set per exercise, you don't really need to do a deload. At best, you would say, you only train when you feel good. If you feel worn out, exhausted, tired, you don't feel well, take another rest day, right? Because recovery, in most cases, is more important than the training itself. It don't make no sense to train if you're not adequately recovered. So if you got low motivation, tired, you just feel depleted, you feel like garbage, don't train. Because you can have a garbage training session and feel miserable, and it gets in your head. You may have diminished training performance and all that kind of stuff. So you want to have maximum performance, which means that you want to train when you're at your best. All right? This type of training is hard. So if you don't feel like doing it, you're not going to push as hard if you're already depleted and don't feel like doing it. Right? So if you're a person where you're just trying to get healthy, you're trying to gain muscle, you're not trying to be a bodybuilder, but you're just trying to gain muscle, you want to have a nice physique transformation, you want to build some muscle, you want to drop some body weight, you want to feel better and have better posture and all of that type of stuff, resistance bands really is honestly all you need. You really don't need a whole lot much else. And the 1 set per exercise, it's good enough, right? And now there's a lot of different ways to train. Let's say you want to train more frequently. Let's say you want to train 6 days a week, because that's just the type of person you are. Then you don't even need to add, and you shouldn't add, more than 1 set per exercise. If you're training 6 days a week with resistance bands, well, then you should only do 1 set per exercise, and you're capped out from there. Because that 6 training days, it'll eventually start to wear you out. I usually, when I do training plans, it's only like 3, maybe 4 training days in a week. More advanced people, let's say bodybuilders, who have more of a training capacity, they can train more days out of a week. Right? Like an advanced trainee can do 5 or 6 days a week. Most people doesn't really make sense to do that. It's a bit of a gamble. It could work, but let's say if you have kids, you're a business owner, or whatever the case is, things get a little dicey. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and if you have one too many nights of poor quality sleep, things could go off the rails really quickly, because this is high intensity training. So you got to be on point, diet, sleep quality, and all that, because you got to maximize recovery, right? And I'm all about recovery. I don't want to do no real long excessive workouts. My workouts are 20 to 30 minutes. 20 to 30 minutes. So I get my resistance bands. I'm doing 20 to 30 minutes. All right. Okay. So we covered the basics. The 1 set, 2 exercises per muscle group. Boom. 3 days a week. The advanced version of that is you add a set each week and then deload on the 4th. That's another variation. Now here's another thing to consider. You can have a drop set. This works very well for, let's say you do push-ups. You start with the heaviest band you can do. You do as many reps as you can with your heaviest band. Let's say with your heaviest band, you're able to crank out 10 reps, right? Or 8 reps, somewhere around there. You do the full 8 reps. You get to 8, then you go for the 9. It's a grind. You fight it. You get the 9. Then you go for the 10th. Because if you fail on a push-up, fine, there's no risk to it. So you push, you get the 10, you almost got the 10, but you don't make it, right? So you get 9 1/4, 9 1/2 on the push-ups, right? You drop down to your second heaviest band, and then you rep out on that right afterwards, right? You can give yourself 5 or 10 seconds in between, and then you go again, right? And you maximize, you get as many reps as you can with that band. Same thing. Once you fail, you go down to your third heaviest band. Same thing. And you work your way all the way down to your lightest band. That could be like your whole chest exercise. You don't even need a second exercise. Let's say, and this works great with just 1 exercise per muscle group. This is really intense, by the way, because you're like pushing beyond failure, right? So let's say if you're going to train like that, you do that with squats. So you do front squats with a resistance band. You do as many reps as possible on the front squats. And you keep dropping down your lighter band until you get down to your lightest band, and you're just doing your squats. You're just repping out. It don't even matter if you get like 30 reps, it don't matter. So first set could have been 8 or 10. Second set could have been like, 12, 15. Third set could have been, 17, 20, and then your final set would be like all the way to like 30, maybe even 35. Hell, you can get 50, but you just get as many reps as you can. And you'll feel that burn. Man, it's intense, but that is extremely effective. So like, let's say one training day, you did the push-ups to max effort. Let's say you did lat pull downs or rows to max effort, right? Let's say you said resistance band rows, max effort. You did those drop sets, right? And then you did overhead presses. Same thing, overhead presses, heaviest band, drop down, max effort and everything. And then on the leg day, it's deadlifts and squats and an ab exercise. You can train like that, and your training session could be like 10 minutes. 10, 15 minutes. Your whole workout could be like 10, 15 minutes. Right? 20 at the most, depending on how much time you take in between each exercise. You may want to take 2-3 minutes in between each exercise, right? One day, upper body, chest, shoulders, back. Second training day, hamstrings and glutes, quads and glutes, so deadlift and squat, and then some type of ab exercise, right? And that ab exercise could be banded reclined knee tucks. Let me show you this, by the way. This is a phenomenal exercise. I gotta show y'all this. Hold on. Let me pull this up right quick. This is a phenomenal core exercise here. Y'all probably gonna look at this too and be like, oh hell no, I ain't doing that. Hold on. Hold on. Boom. Look at this. Get some nice strong hip flexors, abs. Boom. And you can just wrap out. Right? Pulling the knees to the forehead. Right? Pulling the knees to the forehead. Real simple. Leaning back. Light touch on the hands. And pulling in. And just rep out. Do I have another one that I can share as an alternative to this? Let me see. And I'll take some questions too, because I know y'all probably have some questions like, yo, you out of your mind if you think I'm going to be doing that? I need something else that's a little bit easier to do. Let me see. I'm going to give y'all something that's a little easier to do. Not to say y'all are weak or nothing like that, because some of y'all are probably looking at this and be like, man, that's too easy. So let me see if I can get something else here. All right. This is a solid one right here. Boom. Banded reverse crunch. Pressing the elbows into the knees, right? Getting that abdominal contraction. I'm not big into crunches, but these are the crunches. Man, these will set your abs on fire. I'm a big fan of this one right here. Right, as far as for abs are concerned. All right. And with this here, with this band, I'm kind of like bracing the band across my forehead and just holding it in place with my hands. I'm not producing movement at the arms or anything like that. All of the movement is coming from the abs, right? So you really just want to focus on, I want to be able to bring my elbows in by only flexing my abs. So essentially what I'm doing here is I want to focus on pushing my belly button or pushing my spine up to the sky to produce the contraction, right? So I'm coming here, take a deep breath, breathe out, embrace the abs, and then squeeze, right? Focus on driving my spine up to the ceiling, right? Getting the body mechanics up in there. So that could be, let's say if you're very short on time, 2 training days per week. Matter of fact, let's say if you're a person where you play a sport, you live a very active lifestyle. You go hiking, you go bike riding, you do all kind of stuff. So you don't really want to be doing too much resistance training during the week. Well, then you may want to do the 2 training days per week. Right, with those drop sets. That's a really good option right there as far as your training is concerned. Right? And then the final is a more advanced strategy, and you already need to have you need to have pre-existing data for this. And that is the rep total method. So for each exercise, you pick a goal. You want to get to a certain amount of reps. So let's say your goal for the amount of reps you want to get to is 25 reps. So you choose a resistance band that you can get 12, 15 reps. And you get all the way to that 12 or 15. You rest for 15, 20 seconds. And you try to get more reps in, and you push it all the way. So let's say you get that 15, you rest 15 seconds, you crank out more reps, you get to 18, you rest 15 seconds, you crank out some more, you get 21 or 22, you rest 15 seconds and do it again, and you keep doing that until you get to 25. So the amount of sets that it takes you, that's just how much it takes you. You do as many sets as you need to do to get to that 25. And the goal is you can get to that 25 in less sets than you did previously. So if week 1, it took you 5 sets to get there, week 2, you want to try to get it done in 4. Right? And then the week after that, you want to try to get it done in 3 or so on, right? So you keep doing that. So basically, you want to get more reps in each set than you did previously with that band. Right? And you really challenge yourself. That's another way. And the cool thing is you can do that with conventional weights too. Right? I mean, all of these strategies you could do with conventional weights, but just resistance bands are they're basically risk-free. You don't need a gym membership or anything like that. Right? I'm going on kind of long here. We covered a lot, right? We talked about rep schemes. We talked about effort and intensity. We talked about how many days to train, whether it be 3 days a week, whether it be 6, whether it be 2 days a week, how long the workout should be. Instead of doing 45 minutes to an hour, you do 20 to 30 minutes, maybe even 10 to 15. You don't need as much time as you think. You don't need as much exercises as you think. Right? Now, check this out. What I want to do is, let's get into some lower body training. All right, I'm going to get into this here. You can do a lunge exercise with resistance bands. And you can do a type of lunge where it targets like a lunge or a split squat, where it targets your glutes more so. And then you can do another type where it really challenges your quadriceps more than your glutes. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have an exercise. Let me pull this up here. Hold on. Let me get into my lower body bag. Hold on. Here's a great warm-up because I like to pre-fatigue the quadriceps before getting into the dominant exercise. So this is what that looks like. So this is the QF split squat. QF is short for quad focused. Quad focused split squat. So the reason why this is quad focused, now if you notice at the top of the rep, look what I do with my front knee. I'm pulling my front knee back against the band. The band is pulling my knee forward. I'm squeezing my quadricep to pull the knee backward. So at the top of the movement, I'm putting all of my weight over my front foot and I'm really squeezing that quadricep and extending that knee. Right? This really hits the quadriceps big time. If you want to grow some nice, thick, juicy, meaty quadriceps, this is it. And this works also very well with sissy squats. Sissy squats is basically, it's both legs at the same time with your feet together, knees together, and it's more like a knees over toes kind of squat, right? It's a very difficult kind of squat. I don't really have a tutorial for that because I don't really do sissy squats that much. But you can also do this where you can have a band around both legs, around both knees. And it can be a QF squat rather than split squat. I just like splitting it up and you work on one leg and then you work on the other leg. Right? Again, as many reps as possible. Now, this is really cool too for legs, in particular if you really want to build your quads. You want to get some thick thighs, right? And in our year 2024, we like them thick, muscular, athletic thighs, right? We like that. We like thickness, right? We like the thickums. Thick is one of my favorite words. I like the word thick. Thick. It's a great word to say. I like saying thick. Right. So now, we go from that. Now, let's say we want to get into something where we want to really hit our glutes, right? We want to build up the booty meat, right? So now we go into the, where's that? The Bulgarian split squat. Wow, right? Ooh, this is where it's at. The Bulgarian split squat. Elevating the back leg. Now, this is a really challenging exercise. I use a TRX for this. I'm a big fan of the TRX, right? That suspension trainer. And you elevate the back foot so that I can't brace my weight down on my back foot. So my front foot is doing all the work. All right. And I'm leaning forward a little bit, right, on a slight 45-degree angle. I'm really getting that deep hip angle on that lead leg, on that lead hip. And let me tell you something. This right here, man, your glute medius, your adductors, your hamstrings, your glutes. Oh, man, all this is on fire. You can do that drop set method with this, too. That's what I like to do. As a matter of fact, with resistance bands, I train split squats more than squat. I don't really do squats much with resistance bands. I'm all about the split squats and the lunges with resistance bands. Now, this is more advanced, right? Because some folks are going to be like, Remsen has lost his mind, all right? You want to go with this crazy circus stuff? Let's start from the basics. I agree. Let's start from the basics. And the basics we got is the split squat. Blam, right? Front-loaded split squat. Real simple. Okay? Putting all the weight on that front leg. Right? I got to get another pair of these pants. These pants, man, look at me some. These are the thick pants for the thick legs. I was proud of these pants. And then my thighs grew a little too much. And my thighs ate them pants until it was just a hole, giant hole, all up in the inseam. My thighs ate them pants alive. Good times, right? So this right here, band right over the front of the shoulders, right over the base of the foot, right in the arch, or over the ball of the foot, wherever it feels the most comfortable for you. Point the elbows forward, and boom. Right? You don't need the foot too far out in front of you. You want to have more of a narrow stance. All right. Now, I got a lot of split squat variations. I'm a big fan of split squats. So I want to show y'all another one in a different movement pattern. All right. Because we want some nice, strong, flexible adductors. Right? So that's where we get into the Cossack squat. Boom. And this one to really challenge your core too. And let me tell you something. This right here hits your quads and your glutes and everything. Oh, this right here is fire. This is where it's at. This exercise right here. Right? And you'll hit your adductors, your hamstrings, and all of that real good with this. And get deep, because my adductors are kind of tight too. So this is a good exercise for me in particular, and focus on getting deep in that movement. And the cool thing is that if you really want to build your legs, flexibility is really important, right? Getting some nice deep range of motion. This is my back squat range, by the way. So I'm able to train my back squat depth, but one side at a time with the Cossack squat. I'm a big fan of that. Now, I want to show y'all something else here. Let me show y'all a nice cardio hack. Okay, I'm gonna show y'all a nice cardio hack right quick. Okay, so let's say you want to hit legs. You've been hitting legs. It's a leg day, and your goal, you're trying to lose some weight. So you can do a nice finisher. All right. So now I want to show you the finisher. You want to get some nice athletic, powerful legs. This right here. Boom. Nice explosive jump. All right. You're trying to fly. That's the whole goal. Is get up off the ground. Get off the ground as high as you can. Get off the ground. Up off the toes and down on the toes, transitioning down to the foot. All right. Some of y'all might be looking at me like I'm crazy. This is like, that's a little, my knees. If you got knee pain, you got knee issues, you shouldn't be jumping at all, right? But for those of us who want to get a little bit more athletic, we don't really have these kinds of hindrances. This is a good one. Now, modified from that, let's say you don't want to jump. Jumping, the knees, not so much. This is another good one. Boom. The prisoner squat to the knee tuck. Abs, obliques, quads, adductors, all of that. This is a good finisher. Legs and abs day fits perfectly. Right? So body weight and resistance bands. Boom. Now the reason why I like the prisoner squat is because when you interlock your hands behind your head, you'll feel your thoracic spine, the muscles in your back, start to work against your hands. So in order to maintain your posture, you'll pick your chest up. And this kind of incentivizes that. When you put your hands behind your back, you don't want to just roll forward, so you kind of stick your chest out, and so you create that extra resistance. So you also strengthen your thoracic spine as well. All right, so this can improve your posture. Right? So I create training plans. I'll throw this in there as a nice finisher too. Now, let's say you wanted to get into something like a core exercise with a little bit more. Matter of fact, just for funsies, let me show y'all if I got. Let me get in my bag a little bit. Let me show y'all another variation I got here. And this is a little bit slower, so you may want to start with this. Because all of that swinging and twisting and turning, that may be a bit advanced. So to slow it down, you may even want to start with this before you even get into your leg exercise. You may want to do this as a warm-up. Right? Holding the movement, getting real strict with it. Don't rush through. It's not supposed to be cardio or anything. It's more of a stability exercise. Right? So we got the more advanced stuff. We got the jumps. We got the twisting. There's a lot of different variations. Right? Now I want to get into some more glutes and hamstrings. Right? So let's get into them glutes and hamstrings and deadlift variations. Right? So I'm going to show y'all. All of these videos, by the way, these are all in my exercise library that I have up for members. So I have up if you want to get training plans, workouts, resistance bands, that's in my 12-week mentorship. So you can actually sign up for my 12-week mentorship and you get access to all of these video tutorials, training plans, all of that kind of stuff, as well as my high raw vegan nutrition guide, my Thursday night live streams with the members, the member exclusives. All right, you get all that. So the link there will be a link in the description to that. All right, now let me not get too sidetracked here. Let me get back into, what's that, glute and ham work? Glute and ham. So starting from the basics here with the banded deadlift. Boom. Explosive up, nice and slow to the bottom. Real simple, right? And then getting a pivot angle to the side. Boom. Driving those hips. Boom. Full hip extension. When you're up at the top, you don't want to focus on arching your back at the top. You want to drive your hips up and forward. It's all hips, right? Keeping those shins vertical, all hips. All right. Now, you get a nice stretch at the bottom of the movement in your hamstrings, right? Hamstrings, if you really want to grow your hamstrings, it's all about how much you stretch the hamstrings. So when you keep your back flat, you push your hips back, right? So I'm not leaning forward so much. I'm sitting back at the hips, right? Really stretching my hamstrings, right? Now, if you want to get a little bit more hip stability in there, and we all can use a lot more hip stability, so we get into the banded staggered deadlift. Boom. So it's like a It's like a deadlift, but it's also like a lunge. It's just hip dominant, right? But the same thing. Let me tell you something. This is one of the best glute builders that you can do right here. You want to get some nice stable hips, some strong, stable hips. This is a phenomenal exercise for that. Right, look at that. Your boy had when I was doing these videos. You see these capped round shoulders. You see these beefy arms. All of this musculature right here. This is just straight resistance bands. I was training with resistance bands outdoors, soaking up the sun, getting thick resistance bands. Right? If you have a solid training strategy and methodology, and you got a good, solid, durable set of bands, you get some real good work and grow some muscle. No gym needed. All right. I was out of the gym for like 2 years. No, I didn't touch a barbell. All right. So yeah, I mean, you know, life can be a lot more simple. If you've got kids running around, you run a business, you got limited time, you can't be commuting back and forth to the gym and paying fees and being in a smelly locker room, marinating everybody's germs. And you got to drive 10-20 minutes there, then get changed 5-10 minutes, then go in the gym, wait for people to get off of equipment so you can use it, wipe it down because people sweating and slobbering all over it. No, if you don't want to deal with all of that, and you know, we had them COVID scares, right? People coughing all over the equipment, people, you know, just and licking their hands and touching stuff and just wiping the nose and just all is just a biohazard everywhere, right? And the folks, gyms took a hit because people was like, you know what, the whole biohazard soup that's going on right now in the gyms, that ain't it, right? But you know what, we got a solid option, right? It's the bands, right? Bands and games. I got over my phobia. I got a nice, convenient gym spot for the time being. So I'm finally gripping some barbells. Feels good. Feels good, right? But that's just the thing. Just go to a gym and hit a barbell just because I like gripping and lifting heavy weight on a barbell. But I still bring my bands to the gym. I'll be training with bands for the rest of my life. Because the advancements that I've seen training with bands, I mean, the improvements in my posture, my form, musculature, the convenience, it's so much easier to be consistent in your training. It's so much easier to be consistent in your training when you don't have all of these obstacles. Bad weather, so you can't go out and drive. The gym is crowded. You can't get on the machine you want to use. You don't got to worry about any of that if you just got your bands. You can train in the bathroom. Okay? You don't really need much space. You can train in your bathtub. Well, I wouldn't say train in your bathtub. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but you get the point. You really don't need a whole lot of space. You don't need much. You can train outdoors, hook up to a tree, train in your house, hook up to the door. You don't have to hook up into anything. Right? And you 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. 3 times a week, twice a week. And you can start getting some gains as long as you have the right methodology. Right? So I think I covered everything I wanted to cover today. I'll be doing some more stuff talking about fitness and training and strategy and all of that kind of stuff. So everything just doesn't have to be about nutrition, right? Fruits and plants, nuts and seeds, fruits and plants, right? We can talk about getting these gains, turning the energy up, right? So yeah, definitely link is in the description to join my 12-week mentorship. I got my fasting guide up, my high raw vegan nutrition course. I've just been updating the diet plans in the high raw vegan nutrition course. I update the training plans. I add new video tutorials. I add more levels. So I have level 1, level 2, level 3. I got training plans where you work with a barbell in a gym, training plans where you train from home, daily mobility exercises to improve your flexibility, mobility, all of that kind of stuff. So it's the full package up in there. All right, so that's how I'm rocking, right? So I'm always growing that thing. I'm adding new content to it, video tutorials, live streams, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, when you join the 12-week mentorship, you get access to the member support group on Discord. Right? This is fitness gospel, people. True fitness gospel. That's right, Cali girl. Thickums. Yeah, that's right. All kinds of thick. You know us brown folks. You know how we feel about some thickness, some girth, right? I like the word girth too. I like that word. Girth. Thickness and girth. Right? But not all kind of girth and thickness is good, right? We don't want girth and thickness around the belly, right? We don't want that. We don't want, the real deep, sweaty belly button, right? We don't really want that, right? We want the right type of thickness and girth. I love the philosophy of feeling each rep for hypertrophy instead of carelessly doing 3 to 4 sets of 10 reps. Yeah, true. I'm like, first of all, I don't care. However many reps it takes me to get there, I'm getting there. I'm not going to stop at 10 if I got 16 in the tank. That's a waste of a set. The workout previously works on the abs and legs. That's a good one. True. Absolutely. Let me catch up with y'all in these comments here. Hold on. If I want to incorporate resistance machines to my resistance bands regime, how would you recommend implementing that? Oh, I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, it depends, right? Do you want to, if you're going to go in the gym and you're using the machines, what is your goal behind using the machines, right? So like, let's say you go into the gym and you want to use a leg press machine. Okay. So basically you would do your squats and your lunges with the bands to really pre-fatigue the muscle and then go on the leg press machine. That's one way to do it. So rather than loading up a ton of weight and plates and whatnot on the leg press machine, you can pre-fatigue the muscles and whatnot with the band exercises and then go on the leg press machine. Or let's say you're doing a chest fly machine. Maybe you do your push-ups and your banded dips first, and then you get on the chest fly machine, right? So that can work also. So the bands would work good to really pre-fatigue the muscle first, and then get on the machine, right? To finish up, or doing your heavy work. So it depends, right? If you're using the machines, what is the goal behind using the machines? Is it to maximize strength, where you want to lift a certain amount of weight? The machines are specifically good for removing the risk from heavy lifting. That's what the machines are good for. So you can move a lot of weight, and the weight is moving on a track. So you don't got to worry about dropping weights or hurting yourself on the machine or anything like that, because it's not free weights where it's a risk of instability and all of that. So it depends, but it depends on what your goal is. The best combinations though is resistance bands with like barbells. So for example, let's say I'm back squatting, and when I go into the gym and I back squat, I am back squatting because I want to put a high amount of weight on my back, right? A couple 100 pounds, 300 pounds of weight on my back, and I'm squatting into the bottom and standing up as many times as I can with that weight. But beforehand, I may use the resistance bands and really rep out and pre-fatigue the muscles that I'm going to be squatting with to increase the challenge, right? And that's been working particularly very well for me, right? So like, let's say for example, I'll do the QF split squat before I back squat. I'll do the banded deadlift before I do barbell deadlifts, right? So it's that kind of thing. I'll do banded rows before I do pull-ups, that kind of thing. So basically it would be one barbell exercise and one resistance band exercise and pair them together. And basically the heavy weights train my central nervous system to get used to that compressive or tensile load. So if I'm using conventional weights, it's because I'm trying to achieve a particular stimulus. It's not really I'm trying to get like a specific muscular contraction. That's not what I'm trying to do with conventional weights. I'm training a particular movement pattern. So like, let's say if I'm back squatting and I'm putting the weight on my shoulders, on my back, the reason why I'm doing that is I'm using the weight to produce a compressive load on my spine or on my body. And the reason why I'm doing that is because my body will respond to that compressive load by increasing bone density. Right? So I have a stronger spine, and I'm more resilient to a compressive load. If I'm deadlifting with conventional weights, I'm using the deadlift to produce a tensile load. Right? So using that tensile load, my bones now develop more of an ability to handle a tensile load, so my bones won't snap under pressure or fracture, because your bones can be trained to be hard, and your bones could also be trained to bend. Believe it or not, your bones are supposed to bend a little bit. They're supposed to be able to do that. That's what the tensile load does. So your bones respond to tensile force with a slight bend, and that bend protects your bones from breaking, from snapping. Right? So the compressive load makes the bones harder and thicker and stronger, and the tensile load reinforces your bone's ability to bend without breaking. So it's good to have both, right? Also, heavy weights train your central nervous system in a way where your nervous system becomes more responsive to life-threatening loads, so to speak. So the reason why heavy weightlifting is so good for producing muscle mass and extra bone density and all of that is because, well, quite frankly, heavy loads are dangerous, right? So you remember what I talked to about your body builds muscle to protect against a threat. Well, the biggest threat would actually come from being threatened by conventional weights and being literally underneath or lifting a risky, heavy load. So your body will respond accordingly. Now you may say, okay, so if that's the case, then wouldn't barbells be better than resistance bands for building muscle mass? And the answer is not necessarily, because of the risk. It could be better for building muscle mass. It could be, but it depends. What happens when you get injured? And the likelihood of you getting injured is a lot higher with the conventional weights than with resistance bands. So now I know that the less injuries I deal with, the more runway I have for growth, because an injury sets you back. A lot of people, they get injured and they lose muscle mass as a result of the injury, so it sets you back. So let's say two people start training at the same time. One person is using in conventional loads, one person is using resistance training. And they can be moving and tracking with each other, but if the person using the conventional load gets hurt, they get set back, and the person with the resistance bands, they never get injured. They can actually end up passing by the person using the conventional loads. So that's the nuance there. There's risk, there's high reward, there's high risk. Right? Also, now, muscle, the biggest differences between conventional lifting and resistance bands is resistance bands focuses on producing maximal contractions when the muscle is at its shortest contraction, when the muscles are shortest in a peak contraction. Conventional weights is where the peak contraction actually happens. A lot of the stress happens when the muscle is in its weakest position in a lengthened state. You can get a lot of muscle growth from training a muscle in its lengthened state. And a lot of that translates very positively in training with conventional weights. It's just risky to do. And your connective tissues, your joints take a beating training like that. So yeah, you can get a lot of muscle growth out of doing that, but your joints go through a lot of wear and tear that they don't go through when you're training with resistance bands. So then it feeds back into the risk thing, and then, well, how much of your training life do you want to have? You want to have a short training life or a longer training life? It really depends. For me, I really prioritize safety. generally speaking. So resistance bands would win out because you get more longevity with resistance bands for the most part. So these are the things that we have to consider, and you have to think about what your goals are, what you really want out of your training. I think having a mix of both is a good idea. So I like to train both sides of the spectrum. Right? Now, the interesting thing is you don't need conventional weights to actually train the muscle in a lengthened state. You can do that with resistance bands. One way you do that with resistance bands is, let's say you use a force. Let's say you're doing bicep curls. You want to maximize the tension on the bicep from a fully extended elbow to a partially extended elbow. So you use a band. That band, the resistance is too high for you to get a full muscular contraction. So you can only get about 20-30% of a contraction on the bicep. So it's this partial bicep curl, partial rep, right? So you can actually use the resistance band and train that bicep in that partial rep. And so in doing that, you train the muscle in a lengthened state perpetually throughout that entire part of the set. So let's say this is a great way to do this. Here's what you do. Set 1, full length bicep curls, where you train the bicep either full length all the way or from a 90-degree angle and then all the way to a closed angle. Here, 90 degrees, close all the way. 90 degrees, close all the way. Second set, train from fully extended, partial reps. That way you're training the peak contraction, right? You're training that peak contraction here, boom, and then the other one you're training partials, contraction. Right, and that's a great way to grow there. So you can. So if you're a real meathead, you're a real bodybuilder, and you want big, beefy, solid, thick muscle. You want to grow. You want every advantage, right? You want to just get all types of growth and gains and girth, all the G words that we like, right? That's a good option to do as well. You can do that with squats. So let's say you do a squat and you train partials. So you go all the way down to the bottom, but you don't come all up all the way. Right? So you do like these little pump reps. So let's say you do one big set and you do full length reps. And then once you reach failure, then you do these partial reps in your squats. And that will burn like hell. You do that, you get your heart rate up to like 140, 150. You'll get that. It'll feel like cardio. You'll be sucking wind just doing these little baby reps with the band. But let me tell you something. My hardest leg workouts, some of my hardest leg workouts that I've ever gotten in my life were with resistance bands. So, something to consider there. I think if you have lower back issues, training with a resistance band doing a deadlift would be a better bet. Right. If you got lower back issues, you probably shouldn't train with conventional weights doing deadlifts. I think a resistance band would be a better bet. But first of all, you got to really stretch your piriformis, stretch your glute medius, your psoas, really open up your hips first, mobility, and then you start really working on strengthening your hamstrings and your glutes, getting some blood flow into those muscles. And that would help with lower back issues, because a lot of times people have lower back issues because their glutes are weak and their hip flexors are tight. That's the primary driver of lower back pain. Tight hips, short hip flexors, weak glutes, weak hamstrings. That leads to lower back pain. All right. Okay, I covered a lot tonight. Another phenomenal stream. Folks, definitely hit the like button if you like the stream. Like the stream if you like the stream. All right, let's get it pumping. book a call with me. I got room on the schedule. Folks have been trying to get on a call with me. So I got room on the schedule next week. I'm looking at my schedule now this week, and this week is locked down. this week is this week is filled out. But next week I got room for next week. So if you've been trying to get on a call with me, definitely you can book a call with me for next week. And join the 12-week mentorship. You get direct access to communicate with me. And then tune into the Tribe by Noir live seminars where we get together on voice chat. We talk on voice chat. We do live meal planning. We go through training, all that type of stuff. We go through diet, meal prep. And it's not just me you get to talk to. It's other tribe members, right? Folks being there testifying about all their progress, everything they made, and all of that. It's beautiful. It's wholesome, right? So definitely you can join that 12-week mentorship. You can book a call with me. And I also do custom diet plans as well. So I have that open now as well. And I think next week I'll have a slot or two open for personalized coaching. I think I may have one opening up. See. So yeah, your boy is packed. So if you're serious, you want to get serious about your training, your diet, you want to get it together, make some moves. I got some options, right? And regardless, I'm on here every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. All right, so appreciate y'all for coming through, spending some time with me tonight. But it's getting up on my bedtime. And that's that, folks. So I will catch y'all on the next live stream next Monday.